So at this point, we can really just do a bit more for our engine stuff, right? And a little bit more of bridging and extruding border edges. Now, these n-gons we are eventually going to take care of. For right now, they're fine. We're going to do more with them later on, but I'm not going to worry about them right this minute. You should have your mirror modifier set up for this, right? You see how we kind of ended up creating two cylinders that were flattened to kind of be our little engine sections. And we do have a second modifier, right? That subdivision surface modifier. Remember, this is in those videos, right? So you have the videos to be able to watch at home or during class, lab time, if I'm working with somebody else or helping somebody else out, right? And of course, we'll do review lecture on this stuff as well, right? I like to reteach. But we don't have to keep re-recording videos, right? We've already got the video. So you'll notice we still have kind of these bigger, messier n-gons on the bottom here. So remember, one of the things that we went over early on was the inset tool. And I figured it'd be great to just kind of show that again, and that you'll probably end up using it on the bottom of your engine as well. So remember, inset is built to basically work with faces, right? So we hit 3 for face mode, right? Remember, that is one of our edit modes, though. Remember, there's the menu up here, Object Edit Mode. Once that's on, you have these buttons right here, right? But 3 is the quick key for that face mode, particularly if you're using industry compatible, which most of you guys should be, right? Edit, Preferences, Key Map, right here. And then you just go up to this little pull down and pick industry compatible, right? But 3 for face mode. And of course, remember, left click, right? You click with your left mouse button, selects that face. Shift click, right? Shift left click. Shift in Blender, actually, particularly with industry compatible, Shift does a lot of the heavy lifting for selecting altogether, right? Shift will often do your adding and subtracting of selections. Some stuff it doesn't, right? Like the tweak tool, you have to use Control, I believe. But you see, for most stuff, Shift will do both. But it's always going to be either Shift, pretty much always Shift for add. Often Shift for subtract, but sometimes Control for subtract. Shift and Control are right next to each other, right? Kind of on the bottom of your keyboard, right? Shift's the one with that kind of open arrow pointing up, right? It's next to A, Z, caps lock, right? And that's great because they're easy to get to. They're easy to do through muscle memory, right? It's one of the things I like about industry compatible and the default quick keys it uses that are based a lot on Maya is that these are all nice, easy, ergonomic muscle memory ones, right? So we just kind of select those faces, right? Left click, shift left click. And remember, we're in the modeling workspace. So it's always a good idea. I mean, technically these will show up in layout, but modeling workspace kind of gets rid of that little kind of animation toolbar at the bottom. So we always like to be in modeling workspace. Just kind of maximizes a little more of the screen, the viewport real estate here. But remember, a lot of your major tools are right on the sidebar here. And of course, there's other ones in here, right? Remember, you do have select menu, add, mesh, vertex, edge, face. You see how a lot of these tools that you expect are in there. And of course, right click has a lot of them as well, right? But remember, there is the inset tool here. It does actually have a default quick key of I, right? I for inset. So I'll click on inset, and it does give us a yellow circle. That's our tool to interact with it. Although, remember, in Blender with industry compatible, middle mouse button can often do this stuff, right? So if I just hold down my middle mouse button, remember, that's your scroll wheel. You don't scroll it like a scroll wheel. You press it down like a button, right? So you don't scroll it. You press it down like a button, and you drag left or right. So you see how middle mouse button actually does a lot of cool extra work, making your tools work, doing view move, view rotate, uniform scale, view extrude. So I would recommend kind of remembering middle mouse button because that'll actually make the whole process of doing these things even quicker and faster, usually. But remember, they pretty much always have some kind of handle, right? Some kind of controller in the viewport, like this yellow circle that you can grab on. But middle mouse button will often do it as well. So you see how now that I've done an inset, we can kind of see how we've got a little bit more thickness there on the engine. We've got this nice extra row. Because remember, inset is kind of like extrude, except it scales instead of moves, right? Extrude will allow you to view move or move along average or independent normal directions, right? Inset scales, right? It creates new geometry like an extrusion would, right? See how there's this new row of polygons there? Except it scales inward, right? I can just left click drag again in, and it kind of gives a little more geometry there. And by doing two small insets, and you always want to move a little bit, extruding or insetting, you always want to move it a little bit. You don't want these in low res to occupy the same space. If you just inset and don't move it anywhere, these edges will occupy the same space, particularly without the subdivision surface on, and that could cause weird problems for bevel, loop cut, UV and wrap. So pretty much always when you extrude or inset, you should like move it at least a little bit. Now, of course, I want to bring these in a little bit or out, right? We might even make these engines stick out a little bit. So remember, I can right-click. Remember, right-click brings up your context menu. In this case, we're in face mode, so it's your face context menu. Remember, right-click brings up that face context menu. Really, it brings up any context menu, right? Vertex, edge, object mode. But in this case, we're in face selection. And we move our cursor down a couple to the extrude faces along normals. Remember when we used that on our chandelier? So this is not new either. Let me just kind of extrude them out a little bit. And you see how we just kind of extended that engine a bit more there? All right? Now, if you wanted to scale these in a little bit, remember we can turn on R for scale. And we go up to the chain link, right? There's this little icon here, chain link. And we can go to what's called individual origins, right? Because remember, you can actually, with global or the chain link icons up here, right? Kind of see my cursor right up here at the top, right below the animation rendering menus. One's called global, one kind of looks like a chain link, right? Two circles kind of crossing a little bit. These control the rotation of your manipulator as well as the center of your manipulator. The chain link one is kind of your center. So if I switch to individual origins instead of median point, each of these faces, since they're not next to each other, kind of has its own independent scale now. So you see how if I scale them in, you see how they kind of scale on their own? Whereas if I had median point on, see how they scale towards the center of the selection? Remember, we saw that earlier when we were kind of adjusting the shapes for these. So remember, that's there, and that can be really cool. Maybe do one more inset just to kind of get a little bit more of a crease there. And you see how just with a little bit of insetting and extrude along normal direction, maybe even just a scale with individual origins on, you see how we were able to kind of make some nice quick uniform adjustments to make kind of these engines below here stick out a little bit more? But that wasn't anything new, right? We've seen these. These are already in the videos, right? Remember, inset is right here. If you have a face selected or multiple faces selected, you right-click, extrude face along normals there. And then kind of way up here at the top is this little chain link right here. You can kind of see where I've clicked on it. Median point's a good default to have, but if you want to kind of have the faces that were separate from each other, right? They were on the same model, but they weren't next to each other. Individual origins, right? And so one of the things I'm trying to show you more on the spaceship is that you have the ability to use these a bit more, right? Usually global and median point are good defaults that you'll use a lot. But there are times when being able to use like normal or individual origins can be really, really neat. That's one of the things we'll see a bit more on this project. They're optional. You might not always need them, but I want to make sure you guys get to see them a couple more times, a lot more times than we did on our last project. We just didn't need them a lot on our last project. Here you might need them a little bit more. It depends though. But remember, those controls are there. All right. So just kind of a little bit more here, right? We can actually bridge stuff together. Now, what if I wanted this edge to bridge here? That's going to be quite a large section. Remember, at any point, you could still use your loop cut tool, right? Remember, it's right here. Remember, a lot of your big tools are on the side here. Extrude's right there. Insets right there. Bevel. Loop cut. Remember, there is a default quick key for loop cut, Alt-C. And remember, this allows you to put edge loops in, right? See kind of whatever edge I'm over, it kind of goes perpendicular to that. So if I feel like I need an extra edge here, I can just turn loop cut on, and I can put an extra edge loop in there. Right? Remember, we can always go back into shape a little bit more. Remember, bridge same number to same number. So if I want to start to connect these up in a more dynamic way, Remember, you can always bridge. Remember, Q is your quick key for selection. It is the very, very top tool, though. But Q is the quick key for selection. You see how I have one edge selected and one edge selected that aren't next to each other? If I right-click, remember that right-click brings up your context menu. In this case, I'm in edge mode, right? 2 for edges. I went to 2 for edges to select edges. So edge selection's on. Right-click, and remember there's that bridge edge loops tool. And what that does is it creates a bridge between those. Remember, you can start to actually connect up this stuff more and more as you go along. Right? I could easily maybe select this single edge here. Extrude. Remember, the white circle is view extrude. And whereas view extrude wasn't exactly something we wanted to be using a lot on our room, here it's actually quite cool. So remember, that white circle is your view extrude, although that is middle mouse button also. So if I just middle mouse drag, so we can extrude that out. E for rotate. Remember, there's a view rotate there, that white circle on the outside. Middle mouse button will do that as well. Just like with the scale tool, R, there's a white circle that scales all the dimensions at the same time. W for move, and I can do view move there, right? So you see how you can kind of just do some cool view moves and view rotates. Control E for extrusion. View extrude, right? That white circle. I can start to bring this in a bit more. View extrude, bring this in. Remember, as you bring it towards the center, that clipping will work, and we'll start to merge those together. And then I can just switch to W for move, and I can kind of just view move these things around. And you see how we can actually start to kind of build up kind of the back of the shape form, right? And I can move those up a little bit. Alt-C for loop cut if I want to add a quick little extra edge loop there. In this case, just one single edge. And then, of course, I could select these two edges and then shift left click these two edges. Remember, it's got to be same number, same number. Right click to bring up edge context menu, bridge edge loops. And now you can see I've kind of got a bit more of the back of the ship. So you see how you can actually start to build the whole, but you see how we can kind of have these neat forms where this edge loop form kind of wraps up into here, but then breaks off into another form there. This is one of the things that's very, very cool about this technique, is we can kind of build really dynamic shapes with it, right? Forms that really kind of have more dynamicism to them than just a box. Remember, you can grab any edge and extrude it off to create any kind of panel or form. And slowly but surely, you see how we're kind of starting to connect these structures up, and we'll see more bridging to connect these up. So it's not like we're not going to fill this stuff in, right? All these holes that we still have, these gaps, these will eventually be filled in. We're eventually going to fill those in. But we're taking our time getting there, right? Slowly kind of showing you how to build the kind of the skeletal structure of the ship, right? Some of the primary forms. All right, I'm going to save that as version 4. Remember, it never hurts to save as, so you can have multiple versions. Remember, we have our save features in here, save as. All right, and I think that'll be good.